The idea of that mindset is important because it helps us to receive and see, well, if this is not working, what is actually working? And something that happened with my experience with the Pomodoro technique was, at the beginning, 25 minutes was okay, but then it was interrupting in the middle of something interesting. So I left that on the side. I said, I can focus for 40 minutes, and then I can focus on the task. And because I was using the Pomodoro technique, now I know how long this task can take. So there is a constant learning.
Welcome to this new episode of Beyond the Thesis with Papa PhD. Today I have the pleasure of having with me Lucia Juarez, PhD. Lucia is a certified life and academic coach who helps PhD students finish their dissertations faster, with less stress, less procrastination, and fewer tears. That's very important. Drawing from her own experience and degrees in architecture, heritage conversation, and history of architecture, Lucia understands their unique challenges. Her journey began with exhaustion and self-doubt, wondering if she'd ever be academic enough. The turning point came with motherhood, which made it even simple tasks feel impossible. Introduced to the Pomodoro technique by a friend, she realized that she needed a better way to do things. This sparked a breakthrough, leading her to combine mindset shifts, self-care, and time management strategies that reignited her passion for research. Through this experience, Lucia developed her unique Smart PhD system to help PhD students manage their time and priorities both in and out of their academic work. Her approach helps students to improve their academic confidence, meet deadlines, and find more time for friends and family without sacrificing their well-being. Lucia, welcome on Beyond the Thesis with Papa PhD. I'm super happy to have you here. Please let us know where you are at. I'm here in Montreal, but I know you're quite far away. And tell us a little bit more about yourself, about your journey, and about who you are scientifically, but also in terms of helping people through the PhD.
Thank you so much, David. To be honest, I'm so excited to be here. This means a lot to me because I've been hearing your podcast for many years now. And I think it's very important to share my experience and maybe from other clients in understanding that, at least in my experience, when I was doing my own PhD, I was convinced that the only way to make progress was by working harder and harder and harder until that almost broke me. So one of the things that I would like to share today is how it's possible to manage things, turn things around, finding a system that works for you, and it can help you to finish the PhD faster without sacrificing your well-being, as you said before, but also in bringing more joy and in a way that you will be better prepared to life beyond the PhD, and whether PhDs want to carry on in academia or industry or a bit of both. In many of your podcasts, I've been listening a lot about that idea of beyond and students not feeling prepared. So what I would like to share today, they can finish their PhD and be better prepared for that comes next. About Excellent. Me, sorry that because you said where I'm from, because when I start speaking, many people will ask, where is she from? Because of the accent. It's something that I suffer from because I'm very conscious. You know that when you were saying my bio about not feeling academic enough, some of the things was around my English. Of course, English is not my main language. I'm originally from Argentina, so my main language is Spanish. And I think even in Spanish, I wouldn't sound academic enough, I have to say. But I did my degree as an architect there. And then as soon as I finished my degree as an architect, I got a scholarship to do a master's degree in heritage conservation in Spain. Okay. And many years later, another scholarship to do my PhD in Edinburgh University and stay after I finished. So I live in Edinburgh now.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. And I wanted to ask you, because one of the things that I know, and one of the aspects of going to graduate school for a lot of us, not everyone, but for a lot of us, is moving town, moving country, or even moving continent. And from Argentina to Edinburgh, Scotland, it's quite a little, quite a
Yeah,
little
long
ways.
way.
Yeah,
It's a very long way.
and I think it's important to mention because I think it's an integral part of the experience a lot of us have of doing these degrees, and it brings challenges. You were mentioning joy, bringing joy into the PhD, and being far away from your family, far away from your friends, sometimes far away from your partner can be challenging on that side. And I think it's important to mention and to just so people can identify themselves. I know a lot of listeners out there are away from their loved ones and from where they grew up all their life. And, you're not alone. A lot of us out here go through this, and then we find ways to make things work and to have fulfilling experiences and to have some joy in this experience, which is the PhD. We'll talk. I want to talk about that maybe a little later, about this question of joy, because it's a very strong word.
Yeah.
And it's a word that you rarely hear
in
the
academia.
same sentence with PhD.
Yeah.
So we'll definitely talk about that. It's not where I want to start. I want to get there, but I want to start with your story of moving countries, like you said, and your story of going through your academic journey and then figuring out what was going to, what you were going to follow up professionally. And this is what the listeners are kind of dealing with. It's the big challenge, understanding, okay, it's 2025, linear careers don't exist pretty much anymore. The academic career, the tenure track, is much more tenuous, than it used to be like 20 years ago. There's not so many spots opening up. And so we need to get creative about the career. But of course, the first step is going through the PhD in a productive way, and I would say ideally in the minimum time necessary to finish it, not extend it too much. And I think it's going to be interesting to hear how your smart PhD system works to do that. But yeah, first, what was your journey? What brought you, this conscious, this knowledge that, okay, the community needs this help. The community is struggling with this aspect of, like, say, time management, etc., productivity. I'd love to hear how you got to that reflection.
Thanks, David. I think you mentioned before this idea of the challenges. I think every PhD has their own challenge, whether if it's with the research or as you said, with the language, different culture, supervisors. There can be many things that will make that challenging. The problem for me sometimes is when we go, that challenge change to kind of a suffering, or it's affected your health and well-being. And what happened to me is I was having my challenges, but there was this point where I became a mom in the middle of my PhD. So that took the whole challenge, let's say, to a different level. So if being a mom can be challenging itself, and the PhD can be challenging by itself, putting these things together in a different country with no family help and maybe not having enough financial support for helping childcare or things like that, put the whole thing at a different level. So there was at this point that I was so tired of being tired, frustrated, overwhelmed, feeling inadequate as well. I was a little bit older than some of my colleagues at that time. The only one having a kid. I wasn't feeling, not all the time, but I wasn't feeling fully, what would be the word? Like I belong there. And as you are not making the same progress, that start affecting your academic progress. That if your English is not helping and other things are not helping, this is coming down. And there is something new about motherhood, that is a sense of guilt. I don't know you, David, as a father as well, but for me, something that really affected me in my concentration besides being tired and not having good sleep and all that, was that I will be working or trying to work thinking I should be with my baby. Being with my baby thinking, oh, I should be doing some PhD work. And at the end of the day, I wasn't doing any of that. So that's the point when I thought, well, I need to make progress. And also, when you have a scholarship, although it's great, it brings more pressure in terms of what's the quality of the work that you need to do and also timeline. If not, that funding dries out, or in my case, after many years, you will need to return the money, which hopefully I didn't do because I managed to finish in that time. But there is a lot of risk, and that's a lot of pressure. And then when I was saying you don't feel adequate as a researcher, you don't feel adequate as a mom either. So that was a lot to
deal
process.
with. Yeah, to process. No, it makes a lot of sense, and yeah, I cannot, I cannot. How can I say? I'm a man, so I didn't go through fatherhood the way you went to motherhood. So because we're in our patriarchal society and things are the way they are. And when I got my first kid, I was in my first job, so it was different. It was I actually had to deal with being looked at sideways when saying I'd like to take paternity leave. And I learned that I was the first one in that company to ever ask that, and then actually it was me and another guy at the same time, and we kind of held our hands and held our to do it, because here in Quebec we can take some of the time so that the mom can then resume working.
That's good.
So I it's the closest I got to what you're saying, and it is tough. It is tough, but I think it's tougher for moms for sure,
Yeah.
for many different reasons. Yeah, you were going to say something.
No, what I wanted to say is like the important thing is that also when you go low as well, there is always some learning from that if you take the reflection. So what happened to me is, as I said at the beginning, I thought the only way to go through this was working harder and harder. So I started, because the day wasn't productive, I started taking the night, and because I wanted to be with my baby, I will be with them. I will wait. Everyone will be sleeping, and at 10 p.m. I will leave the bed. I will go to a dark living room, open my laptop, and keep working midnight, 1, 2, 3 a.m. or at any point that I will feel I made some kind of progress. So I could go to bed with some kind of
Yeah.
peace
With
of
kind of a feeling
mind.
of peace of mind, and a feeling of, okay, I have achieved something. It's funny, the scenario you're saying. I've seen my partner go through that. I've seen colleagues who are moms go through exactly that. They have another shift that starts after everything else is done, and it's just your brain and your body can only do so much. So I imagine that must have taken a toll on you, on your attention, on maybe your health. But I wonder how you ended up dealing with that.
Well, the first thing was like, at the beginning, I thought I nailed it. I was with my kid, I was with my husband, I was making progress, but it didn't last long until I started having migraines. I developed like a sciatica, a tendinitis in my hand for being with a mouse, working all the time. And of course, I was super moody for not sleeping well. So that would affect in my relationships. So and I was this point, I couldn't handle it anymore, and I need to go to the doctors. I went to the doctors, and he said, Lucia, you need to take a break, start doing exercises, and take this letter to the university so they can set, it was a letter to the disability department so they can set the desk for me to avoid the tendinitis and the sciatica problem. But I remember like when the doctor was saying like you need to do to go to Pilates classes at least 2 times a week and do this. I was thinking like, is he crazy? He has no idea. Like, I'm trying to take every minute I have to work on my dissertation. And he's like, I haven't, like, before that, I thought I cannot afford that. And then, but because there was that point, and sometimes it's when I said, is when we sometimes have from these difficult situations that turning point, I didn't have any other option. And it was a red flag I couldn't ignore. So I started doing the Pilates classes, trying to sleep better. Things started to get a little better with the time. I wasn't so sore. Migraines are still going on, but not as often. And I started to make some progress and getting some momentum. But it wasn't as I thought would be. Better, but not as I thought. So I was having a conversation with my husband, and he said, Lucia, how we can help you? We were talking about, I said, well, I need more time. Like, my baby was 3 days in the private nursery, but he said, we cannot afford more days of nursery, but I can, if you want, take him, like drop him and collect him from the nursery, and that will give you some time because we were taking turns. And I said, that's great. That will give you 1 or 2 hours more every day to work a little more. And I thought, well, this is it. This is what I need. And David, I remember that day, yeah. So I went to the work office at the university, so excited, like, this is it. This is what I really need. I see it. I was working, but 3 p.m., I had a crash. I was feeling a weird sensation in my whole body. Like, it was 3 p.m. I have like 20 tabs open. I was reading and I wasn't reading. Like, what am I reading about? I've been here like for 7 hours. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm not with my kid. I've been here for hours. I have 20 tabs open, but I haven't done any progress at all. And I started crying. And I was like, like a chest pain. Like, what am I doing? I cannot do anything right. I'm putting my life here, all my life in my PhD for my kid, and this is not working. So what happened after that, another red flag that I couldn't ignore, was it wasn't about the time. It wasn't about like a bunch of things that I needed to put together. So I can use the time that I have available in a smarter way. So I could be a little bit better if I'm more rested. But if I go without a plan, a goal, and a strategy, I wouldn't take most of that time. I wasn't quite sure how to do that. And that was when a very close friend, she's actually from Montreal, but not from there, it's from Argentina, but live in Montreal. She had twins almost at the same time that I had my baby, but she's not a PhD. And she said, have you tried the Pomodoro technique? Because that can help you with that concentration. Like, being a mom, I didn't have that 8 hours of focused work anymore. So I thought maybe this will help. And that did. So I started, I'm started thinking, first of all. So I add a little bit of reflection. So I need to make this work. This is not working. What I can do differently. So I think with my husband's help, to have a little bit more of time every day, I will go to the office earlier. And by doing that, I will arrive before everyone else, and I'll do like a 10 minutes meditation. And that, David, really helped me to be more present, to avoid that thing that was happening with thinking about, I don't know, being in the office but my head being somewhere else, or thinking about my kid or whatever. So with doing this meditation before starting to work, and just after that, the Pomodoro technique, I started to be more focused and more productive. So at the end of the day, 1-2 hours were more productive than that 7 hours that I had in the past without like opening many times and doing nothing. And also I was trying to pay more attention on, for example, there were things that were distracting me, like the phone, but also mails. Sometimes I will open the mail in the morning, and even if I didn't answer them, if my supervisor would say something, that would be, in the back of my head. What the heck he want? I'm a god, like just thinking. So that was distracting me. So I would be full on at least half of the day. Also, it happens when you have kids that you have a lot of interruptions, like,
Oh yeah.
your baby is feeling sick or that. So for me, just starting feeling productive was really helping, because if I have a call at 2 p.m. that I needed to leave work and pick up my son, at least I will feel I have done something, I have achieved something. So
Yeah. Yeah, that's a bunch of this. That's a bunch of stuff. And one thing that your example kind of makes me think of is, and you because you went exactly through it. There are some ideas that we default to if no one tells us better. And one idea, especially if you're doing a PhD and it's probably the only thing you're doing in your life, or the main thing. Maybe you're not even. In your case, you were a mom, so you had to juggle things. But sometimes, depending on how things are organized, you may even be dropping hobbies and things like that, or other activities that you have to focus on the PhD. And and then what happens is things go wrong. For me, it was the case. Something went wrong, and after the first year, I had to change projects. And then you think, okay, the way to solve this, because now I lost a year of time and of work, is I need to work harder and I need to put in more time. And it was kind of your reflex. If I have more time, things are going to work. And then you had more time, and then it didn't work. And you still felt unproductive, etc. And I think from our conversations before, this idea of some misconceptions that we have, just because they're kind of logical ways to think, right? Okay, well, I need to spend time doing this project to get to this goal. So the more time I put every day, well, the faster I get to the goal. But then there's the fact that our body has its limitations. Do you want to talk about that, about the misconceptions or the wrong ideas or the false ideas that we...
So we have so many, to be honest, in the academic world, but I would say there are three that I hear all the time, and they were the ones that I had at that time. It was that I needed to work harder instead of finding something that really, really works. I see this all the time. People that comes asking for help because they've been 3 years and they haven't written one chapter, or this idea that I need more time. So anyone feeling that the day needs to have more hours, there is something in there. Like, we cannot have more hours in the day, and you cannot take in from your sleep. And the other thing that sometimes affect us as well in the PhD journey, that might be connected with this idea of joy as well that we talked about before, is that we don't need help, that we need to do it on our own. It's a very solitary journey.
And even that suffering and having a hard time is part of the... I've heard this, it's part of the process. If you're not suffering, you're not doing it right. There's some of that out there.
Yeah. How wrong is that, isn't it? And then when you realize that you can experience a better, more efficient, more productive way to do, where you're having more joy, more time with your kids, your family, your friends. You can go to do the Pilates classes or whatever, and you could have time for to meditate, cycling to work or anything like that, and be more productive. You realize it's a myth. It's not true. It's not that you need to work harder or you need more time or you cannot have help. So I think something that sometimes I think most of us, when I was talking about this idea of being hours without producing, I could see you kind of nodding. And I think many of us has experienced that. But we also experience sometimes 1 hour that we are in a flow and we can be very productive, that bring a lot, writing a lot or having a very productive session for whatever that is. So what is the difference that makes the difference here? Why 1 hour one day can be productive and 1 hour another day is not? So when you think about it, and I think that will link with the Smart PhD framework, because I realized the hour that I was productive was when when I had a good sleep the night before, when I have a positive mindset thinking I can do this, when the task that I set for myself in that hour was attainable, I knew what I wanted to do, I was able to do it. I had that reflection before knowing this is going to work. I managed my time and I knew with efficient and the energy that I have that I could have done that work in that hour. That was part of a bigger plan. And when you create that and put that in habits and routine consistently, is when you can move faster. Sometimes we need to kind of slow down, put a strategy in place, and then you move faster instead of keep doing the same thing over and over, thinking or wishing something will be different or the results will be different today just because it's a different day. So, and all that, when you start in that hour, when you're more productive, I can see the results, you feel more motivated by default and you feel the momentum, and next hour most likely will be much more productive as well. So I think sometimes we don't take the time to stop and reflect. And I think when what happened to me is I had that kind of reflection because I needed to stop. I couldn't, it wasn't sustainable for me. So something that happened is like, well, I have my thesis here. It's massive. But I remember holding it when I finished and thinking, oh, Lucia, you could have done this in less time, less energy, less suffering, in a more practical way, maybe even better in terms of quality. And I think that was motivating me to make this change and help other students now, because I think we pay with our life at some point in the PhD.
Yeah, and
Is it
we're with
worth
our
it? What's
mental
the
health.
cost?
Yeah,
What's
with
the
our mental
cost?
health for sure.
And it's not needed. We don't need that.
Yeah. No, for sure, for sure. And one thing that strikes me is that the first part of your story, you were well, we're not thinking about your husband and how he was taking care of things on that side, but in the lab, at university, you were kind of in that very and it's a very normal, let's say, or very frequent or very how can I say, canonical way to go, which is I need to do this on my own. I need to solve whichever problems I have on my own. And then you had this conversation with this friend across the ocean saying, oh, did you try the Pomodoro? And just the fact that you talked with this person brought a little element that kind of made you think differently. And I think, to me, this brings home the message of yes, your PhD is supposed to be your work, but the human experience of going through a PhD, you should not be completely alone doing it, or at least when you have issues and obstacles, you should not be ashamed of looking for help with it. This is something that is. I remember, we didn't. We had lab meetings when I was in the PhD. I was doing a PhD in cell biology, so it was lab and cells and very, very, it's a wet lab type of experience. I'm sure very different from yours, but we didn't share strategies for. People who we saw, oh, this person is really doing great, and it looks. First, one caveat: sometimes people look like they're doing great, but they're just facing the same challenges we are. It's just that they don't, because it's not you, and because maybe they act a different way. You think they're having it super easy.
Yeah. There were a few things that I was thinking when you were talking, David. And one is that something that was very good for me is I have a very good supervisor, and I have a very good bunch of PhD friends that we were sharing the same study space. We have lunch together, and we were having lunch together. We would talk about how you doing or things like that. The problem is, like, sometimes we tend to mask, as you said. So sometimes we are not really, we can have discussions, but we are not really open. And sometimes there is something in how we receive others' advice. So something that happened to me before the Pomodoro technique was, I'm an architect, and my colleagues in the same department were architects as well. So for architectural projects, it's very common to use a Gantt chart. Are you familiar with that? So one colleague who knows I was struggling, he came like with a perfect Gantt chart with his progress for his PhD, and he said, Lucia, look, you should try this. And I was feeling so bad, David, so inadequate, because that's not my way. It's too rigid for me. And being a mom, like a Gantt chart, it would never work. So, but what was my thought at that point was I would never be organized enough. I would never be as good as he is. So, but because that's the mindset, so that's why when I talk about that framework, the idea of that mindset is important, because it helps us to receive and see, well, if this is not working, what is actually working? And something that happened with my experience with the Pomodoro technique was, at the beginning, 25 minutes was okay, but then it was interrupting in the middle of something interesting. So I left that on the side. I said, I can focus for 40 minutes, and then I can focus on the task. And because I was using the Pomodoro technique, now I know how long this task can take. So there is a constant learning. So it's very important to share. I don't know if you ever have this feeling as well. People who is not doing a PhD will hardly understand what you're going through. I remember my husband saying something that it was very helpful to me. I hope he doesn't listen to this. But he said, like, when I was struggling at some point, he was saying, but you're like reading all day. How hard that can be. And I knew, like, he has no idea what I'm going through. It's not the reading. It's so much going on in your brain in that research project. And you can say, oh, I'm going to take some time off. Let's go to the party. And in the party, people they start asking you, how you doing with your PhD? Why you haven't finished? Or everyone is talking about buying a house, and you're struggling to pay a nursery to finish that PhD, and things like that. You feel very isolated also in the conversations. But a lot comes to you in how to share, how to receive, how to reflect on your reality.
Yeah.
Does it ring a bell? I don't know.
Oh, it does. It does ring a bell. It does ring a bell, and it's people. Yeah, people outside, or people who made a different choice and have been like working for a while. Yeah, it's sometimes there's some difficult conversations there, and that also, depending on how you're built mentally, may also not help, because you're feeling, okay, I don't see, I am now, I am myself, let's say, living with some imposter feelings, and now even people from outside are not seeing my value. And if you're a little bit fragile, it can bring you down in a certain way. But let's talk about that. Let's talk about, well, first, how do you build a system that helps you be productive, but also feel productive, and less prone to doubting yourself, and also to comparing yourself with others, which I think is it's really a trap, because you never know the full story that your next bench colleague is. You never know their full story, and they may look stellar, and they're dealing with their own their own difficulties that you just don't know of. But because you know yours, and you're comparing, and you see your weaknesses, or your failings, then you think, okay, I'm not as good, or I'm not good enough. And I think that's something we should deconstruct. So how do we help ourselves feel
it's so
better
interesting
about
that,
the process?
David, because it's funny sometimes when you talk to other people about this, they will see you smarter than you do, or things like that.
Yeah.
So I always remember reading like a English book to my neighbor, and his mom came and said, "You are so awesome!" Like reading in another language, doing the PhD, and I was feeling like, what is she talking about? I was always so ashamed. Like I was reading that book, knowing that I wasn't pronouncing every word properly, but she was looking at me with such admiration because she couldn't speak another language, and although she was a doctor, she's a doctor. So sometimes it's so much in our head, isn't it? And it's not really that reality. So I think it's important sometimes in that self-talk that we have is to ask, is this actually true? I always said that we need to apply the same things that we do for research. So when you start having this conversation or thinking about the imposter thing, what we usually do is we go for the evidence. So when you're feeling, I'm not feeling academic enough, or my English is not good enough, I'll go for every time I have been making a mistake, or feeling unprofessional because my English wasn't good, or things like that. So I will go in my head looking for these times. But what happened if instead of that, I look for the times, like when I was reading the book to my neighbor, or I was looking for other pieces of evidence to tell myself a different story. At the end of the day, we have the power to choose that story. And I think something that you were saying before about the whole story, or when you talk to others, or the support that you can have for the institutions, what I'm finding, and I think that's why I like the Smart PhD system, is the idea of have a better understanding that we are a whole. So when we talk about just the mindset on their own, it won't matter. It's kind of not enough, because we are not just mindset. We are not just self-care. We are not just a time management machine. We are a person, and one of the most important things that I see over and over in the experience that I have in the past as well. And I think that's why in the Smart PhD, there is not anything related with knowledge itself. The times in our life that we are not having a good academic performance, like 99% of the time, is because something was going on with us internally. So something going on in I'll see this because I have so many students. When they're doing well, something is wrong. I know it wasn't the topic. Sometimes they know everything and they still don't pass because they wasn't focused. Their head was somewhere else. So in terms of how I came out with the system, although I feel that I learned on my own way, when I finish my PhD and I have this feeling I could have done this in an easier, faster, better, more enjoyable way, it was too late for me. And I was tutoring at Edinburgh University before COVID. When COVID stopped is when I thought I need to do something different, and I realized I really like helping students, and I realized that when I was teaching them, and if they didn't progress in the way I wanted to, it wasn't about the content I was delivering. It was more about what was going on for them personally, but also some things that they were more related with clarity, the structure, how to write, how to see things with more clarity, rather than the content I could give them and they can read on their own.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a very successful experience in helping them with that, instead of focusing on like the material, the
Of course,
knowledge
their
part.
subject, which I imagine
Yeah.
you work with people who work in different domains, so yeah, you couldn't really help them, all of them, with their subject.
No, and everyone has their own interest. So I think on all of that, it's about when we were talking earlier about the well-being and the health. I think it's very important to understand that PhD is not about the thesis. It's about you. You bring part of you. It's your knowledge, your way to see things that will make the difference in that contribution to knowledge. Is it worth living your life in the middle? And I have to say, some people leave the PhD or stay too long in the last period when it's so little, or they can do just the last push, just because they are too tired, because they didn't put the system in place at the beginning. So it's sad, because not just for them, the world is missing something great. I'm still not telling you about the smart PhD, and I realize
It's okay.
that.
It's
Yeah.
okay, but we can I'll take the opportunity to introduce it myself, because I think it's interesting, and then I can and we are getting to the end part of the interview. But so smart, I just you'll talk about it, but smart PhD is S is for self-care, and we talked about it already a little bit. M is for mindset. We also covered it a little bit before. A is for attainable goals. R is for reflection. T for time management, which we talked about. P, planning plus priorities. H, habits and routines. And D, the drive, the energy that
drive and
fuels the whole
motivation.
process. So it's a nice acronym. But let's say, to kind of finish giving an example. Let's say we travel to 2003, 2004, when I got here to Montreal, and both you and me, but we know, I don't have my degree, but you know what you know today. And so I get to my PhD, I get here to Montreal, and someone says, oh, there's this person, Dr. Lucia Juarez, who really is helping young graduate students, structure their PhD day to day in a way that kind of optimizes their whole experience and allows them to reach their goals and to have some joy throughout. What would that meeting with you be back in 2004 with David, who has just a master's degree and is starting this new thing?
I'm not sure if I get the question, David. So
it's just a role play. It's just a role play of imagine me before my PhD coming to you and saying, Lucia.
Yeah.
Oh, actually, to say Lucia or Lucia, because I have that's
Lucia. You said it right.
Lucia, someone told me you can help me because I'm starting the PhD. I'm a little bit lost. Maybe I'm feeling a little bit inadequate looking at the people around me. And I heard someone told me you can really help me start this in the right way and put processes in place that'll help me go through in the best way possible. How would that meeting go? Or if you want, you can actually talk about an example of someone you've worked with.
Yeah. I think because of the experience that I have with the Smart PhD system, I know, and I have to confess, not only for PhD students, but that will go for undergraduates or people in another areas. Most of the time, when they are struggling with something, even let's talk about industry, it can be some of these things going on. So like a lack of self-care, they need to work around their mindset. They need to work more around the goals, because it's very frustrating when we don't work with attainable goals, because that goes into our own trust. Or they are living a life without much reflection. Or they need more time management or understanding better. Most of the time, they need to know more about themselves. And
that resonates, yeah.
And so or they can have like a better way to live their life and PhD by having a healthier habits and routines. And sometimes, many times, PhD students will come to me because they don't feel motivated. So a good point to start can be using the Wheel of PhD diet that I have created, so students can assess themselves and put a score, let's say 1 to 10, how you're feeling in your self-care. I have created something to make this easier, not with a score, but just with questions about how is your sleep or things like that. So that can give us an overview of how is this system working, and maybe detect what are the areas that need more attention. I would say like every individual is different. Many things that I see, or most often, will be self-care, mindset, motivation. Very difficult. Like people don't usually come to me because they want more reflection, but it's one of the things that will certainly work around, because the coaching sessions itself is a space for reflection. So you need that to understand what is working, what is not working, and start putting on a strategy. So that will be a starting point to understand what's going on and what needs more attention.
Mm-hmm. And this Wheel of PhD quiz is, I have, you shared the URL with me, and I'll put it in the show notes. And this is a free resource that people can use.
Yeah. I think sometimes happens because coaching services sometimes cannot be in a budget for a PhD student. Mm-hmm. So I was trying to develop something that I don't want to leave people behind, I told you at the beginning, I was struggling to pay for childcare or this or that. Mm-hmm. And I feel that the universities are providing help in terms of well-being or imposter syndrome workshops or tools for time management, but nobody's helping you to put that together in a holistic way that works for you. So, for example, if we go back to the examples that we were talking about, my colleague with the Gantt chart, that wasn't for me. That would never work for me. It was working for him, but it wasn't working for me. So it's important to find a way that you can reflect a little bit more on that, what will work, try and reflect, and keep improving.
And so what I'm getting from what you're saying, and this is why answering my question is not that easy, is that all of these elements, the SMART and the PhD and in your acronym, they're kind of all interconnected. So if you say, I'm struggling with the writing on my PhD, I'm just going to focus on learning, writing tools or processes. If you're not working, what I'm hearing is that if you don't work on your self-care, on your mindset, etc., and time management, just trying to have this like silver bullet that solves one thing is not in the end going to be working, because you need to, because you're a whole being. And all of these things need to be at least at a functional level. That's what I'm understanding from what you're saying.
Yeah, and also these are strategies as well. So think about, if we talk about the SMART PhD, and we talk, for example, about planning and priorities, how many times do you have a perfect plan in front of you that you created and spent some time doing it, and you couldn't achieve it? How many times? So it's not about planning. You can have the planning. You can have that plan in place and be good, but if you're not reflecting in the way how flexible you need to be, especially if you are a parent, but what if that plan is not really strategic, and what if that planning is not contemplating a healthy routine or habit about having a good sleep? Even if you say, I'm going to write, and you have the time, as we were talking about, and you are 8 hours in front of the laptop, but you are not thinking or you are not focused because you're not rested, or you are not focused because you are thinking, my English is not good enough, I'm not academic enough, what am I doing? And you don't know because you don't have any specific goal, or or you don't feel motivated to do it, it's much more difficult. So I like this idea of the system, and I think every letter is like a gear, and then you move one piece and it's helping the rest. So if you are taking care of yourself, most likely, how can you be positive in your mindset if you're grumpy and you didn't sleep well? Is everything comes together, and I think, as I said, universities provide help, but we need to see ourselves as a whole and have a better understanding, everyone individually, on what will be that strategy, considering these 8 gears that will make our own system work. And I know I've seen that. I have a client, for example, recently. She had 3 kids. The youngest girl, 1 month old. And she finished the dissertation working 2-3 hours a day. So it's not about having more time. I couldn't believe, she was saying to me, Lucia, I don't even tire. I'm not even tired. I'm producing in 3 hours much more than will produce the last 2 months. Just because I have clarity on what to do, I feel motivated, I have a clear goal, I know my priorities, I'm reflecting on what is working, I know what I can do, and so that affects the mindset. And I'm not sacrificing time with my baby or my sleep. And it's possible, baby. It is possible.
Yeah. No, that's a great example, and it's great. I was going to ask you for kind of a practical example, and you just gave one, and I think it does make sense, and I think people listening, if you have, to me at least one. Well, before I was going to give a take home message, but before that, because we're getting to the end of the interview, Lucia, if people want to reach out to you, I already said I have a few URLs that you shared with me that will be in the show notes. But for the people who are watching, who are listening, how can they reach out to you, learn a little bit more about the Smart PhD framework, maybe learn a little bit more about you, ask you some questions about something that we talked about in this episode? What's the best way to reach out to you?
Yeah, so I think from my website will be a quite direct thing. But what I would like to say, sometimes people feel like that's a bit impersonal. So anyone listening, I'll ask just to feel free to DM me on LinkedIn, for example. Okay. They don't need necessarily to go to a call, or even if they don't want to do the Wheel of PhD live, just have a chat and share their experience. I really love helping, hearing stories. I've been there. I know how you can feel. And to be honest, David, I feel this is my mission in life, like helping students. And if it's not through like a proper coaching program, but we can just exchange few messages, and I have a lot of free resources. So for all these tools, the thing is, as I know, I have a lot of things for time management, like tools and techniques, but I know I can give this clearly, but sometimes you need to have that space to know exactly what is going to work for you. But I have a lot of things to give away, so anyone, I would like to hear the story.
Perfect. So on LinkedIn, Lucia Juarez, PhD. And can you just, for the people who are just listening, just say the URL of your website?
It's www.luciajuarez, it's LuciaJuarez.com. And if you go there, I will explain a little bit more about the Smart PhD framework. I have the quiz there as well. I'm organizing some activities in the future as well.
Wonderful. Lucia, so as I was saying, so if you are listening, I think one take-home message that I am taking from this conversation, and I'll let you comment in the end, is that the PhD is such a long thing. It's this machine with so many, many moving parts. that are different, and that take different aspects of your focus, your concentration, your time, etc. That there's no there is you cannot solve all the challenges that you'll find, and you will find challenges during a PhD. It's part of the it's by design. You cannot solve them just by putting in more time and putting in more effort. What you're doing is just inching forward, closer and closer to burnout. And that's, again, I've had conversations about that. The episode with Ozgun Unver was just about that, how to avoid and beat burnout in academia. So if you are in this situation of feeling inadequate, feeling you're somehow time is fleeting and you don't see the results, then try to first understand and allow yourself to think, okay, this is a learning process. There's something I haven't learned yet, and it's not just one thing. It's kind of a system, like you said. It's kind of a cog wheels.
Yes.
It's kind of a sequence or an ecosystem of things that have all to go together to then let me go through this very difficult experience in a way that's healthy. And I think that's, you said joy in the beginning. Of course, I wish joy to in the day-to-day to everyone who's in graduate school, but at least health. Go through graduate school with your full mental health, and that's it. It's all of these things. I think time management is a big one. Having good habits and routines is also a big one. And then I would say, and all of the letters I think are important and are key. But self-care, I think, like you said, is one of the aspects that. And I know I went. It was one of the things that in my case I didn't think of or put much thought or energy into was self-care, and so one of the things that I think you should take from this is you don't have your thesis is your work, okay, personally, but the day-to-day of going through graduate school, the challenges that it's bringing you, especially if they feel heavy or heavier than they should, and they're not making the experience a joyous one, then you need to allow yourself to get help. Not think that getting help is some sort of not think that getting help is some sort of proof of your weakness or your inadequacy. No, it's just there's things you haven't learned, and you're really in full ignorance of exactly what they are. So you find someone who has thought about it, and Lucia is such a person, and get better at this graduate school and this university experience with now kind of a roadmap, some habits, some practices that will kind of, like you said, you just said this example of the person who said, wow, in 3 hours I did more than in the last 2 months. You will feel positive about yourself, about your work, and then it can actually feel like, oh my gosh, I'm like on another planet right now, just because I put a system in place and I am following this system that is necessary to go through this complex experience. I don't know if Lucia, you have something to add or a reaction to this, but it's what I'm taking from our conversation.
Yeah, I love your reflection, and I think something that somehow I would like to add is, for anyone listening, I know that you have everything you need to get to the end inside you. It's just you need some help in put that system in place. So, but all the thing, because when you have that, the knowledge will come. You will know what you are going to look for. But you cannot do it if you are not physically and mentally fit for that. So when I talk about self-care, it's about seeing your body and your mind as the vehicle that is going to help to get to the final line. And I know, and I think it's good that it's first in the line for the Smart PhD. And I think when I have created this, David, one of the things is I wanted to create something that the students will remember what is important to have a good PhD life. And 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 somehow this came naturally because as I said, I was listening and listening and listening. So many students with the same challenges. I know that they need to work in these 8 things in order to get better. And as I said at the beginning, this usually helps them to they can put the system in place in few weeks, 6 weeks or something like that. And they will extend that to their personal life. For example, this client that I told you, she said, I'm better at home. I'm more organized with my kids. Like everything is better now. And the other thing, she's not someone else. So when I say you have inside you everything you need, the system will help you to bring a better you, not someone different, not my colleague with a Gantt chart. It was me trying to be better. You just need to stop and reflect and create a system that will bring you more results, that will work with you and will bring the best of you, not just for the PhD.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Because again, this is a kind of a holistic approach.
Yeah.
Lucia, this has been a great conversation. Thank you so much for reaching out. Thank you so much for the time. I really think we are aligned in what motivates us to do what we do, and I wish you all the best in helping the most people possible go through these experiences in a healthy way, and if possible with joy. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, David.